Cowabunga, bros. What's going on, guys? Carter here with Edge Mindset. I apologize for that intro. I really didn't intend on it coming out that way. We've got a very cool knife to look at. This was sent in on loan from a knife friend in the community. This is a knife that it's one of those weird stories where I've wanted one of these for maybe, 10, 12 years, something like that. Really, since I started getting into knives. This has been one on my list. It is a custom knife, right? A custom knife maker, not associated with this patch. So if you're thinking this is a TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle knife, it is not at all. So sorry to disappoint you. It's just a random patch. It's very cool though. This is, a maker that I've had my eyes on for a long, long time. In fact, I have a email from 2013. So I guess it's longer than 12 years ago, or no, I guess 12 years ago, me reaching out to the maker saying, I want to get on your books. He responded that, he had to do some stuff with his system. He wasn't able to add people to the books right now. And then I guess I just fizzled off and nothing ever happened to it. And unfortunately, this maker is no longer with us. Rest in peace. But this is Dwaine Carrillo tunnel rat. Now, yes, sir. So this is kind of the overbuilt crazy knives of the mid-2000s final boss, is kind of what we're looking at here. But, in my opinion, there's a lot of things about this knife that was kind of ahead of its time in certain respects. Broad strokes, yes, this is that giant, obnoxious knife style that people don't really, or at least the more mainstream knife community doesn't really care for anymore. There's a bunch of us still kind of holding strong with this style of knife, hoping it'll come back in style, or actually just appreciating it, right? I don't think a lot of people really care. They just want to get their knives that they enjoy. But this is of that era. But Dwaine, his machining quality, his build quality is really far better than a lot of the makers at this time. You got to remember, this is around the time that like Medford was first starting. And if you remember, those knives were always a little bit rough in their execution, not centered, not very smooth, right? Just kind of a little bit rough. But Dwaine here really made some impressive knives. You can see right there, Tunnel Rat with 2 T's. CPM 154. And then he would do I feel like his knives are very kind of futuristic, like Akira type stuff, because he'll do kind of the labeling, right? Like Magnum. It doesn't mean anything. It's not the style of steel, but he'll throw these words in there. He'll throw Rhino and all kinds of interesting markings and insignias. There's his Carrillo design logo right there. For example, we've got a 1-1 right there. I don't know what that means. I don't know if this is number 11 and they're numbered, or if that's just random markings on the blade there. Made in the U.S. right there. Because yes, he is a custom knife maker, was a custom knife maker here in the U.S. But you can see how centered this is, how cool this is. Big aluminum, I believe aluminum standoffs. Really cool pocket clip. Like a big, chunky, bent pocket clip. And what he's done here, right, because obviously this is way too thick to actually have any spring to it. He's got it goes through. You can see how it's sanded on this side, but then he has a pin, and that pin gives it a little bit of wiggle that actually allows you to kind of get it over fabric. And believe it or not, this works very, very well in terms of retention. If it didn't have this kind of bit of wiggle from being loose in there with the pin, you would be really, really stout. It'd be very hard to get this in and out of any pockets there. Another interesting thing I noticed is he uses a very large detent ball. I don't know if you can see it in there. It is a steel detent ball, but it's huge. And it does make me wonder why we don't see more makers experimenting with larger detent balls, especially with manual knives. Because what it does is it just makes a less harsh opening. Now, right now, we're really into the snap, right? We're really into that really crisp kind of, I'm leaking oil, really crisp kind of detent, right? And to get that, you do want a small ball. But back in the day, we used to like to slow roll our knives. And having a big detent ball like that facilitates that. Makes it really nice and smooth to open it, but still gives you, good retention, things like that. Really oversized thumb studs right there. Very, very cool. Just all around, his designs are pretty freaking wild. And look at the size of that secondary bevel. We also don't see that used too often, right? Bevels are generally, within a small scope of width, and we don't see giant bevels like this, primarily because this would be difficult to sharpen at home, because essentially what this is doing, normally, and this is kind of, people that understand knives and are familiar with knives, this isn't news. But for people that don't know, you usually have what you call a primary bevel, which is this main blade grind, and that's what kind of gets you from the stock to some kind of edge that can be sharpened. And then you've got a secondary bevel right there, and that is the actual sharpened edge. So if you were to sharpen this knife, you'd be trying to match that secondary bevel and removing a slight bit of material in order to sharpen this, assuming, that stropping won't do it. But that's generally how most knives are set up. You'll see it on here. This one's all stone washed, so you can't see the grind lines, but this is the primary bevel. And then you've got the secondary bevel right there. On this Carrillo here, it's really got, a couple things going on. You've got your primary bevel here. It's hollow ground up here, then flat ground on this. But this isn't a true secondary bevel because it's got a micro bevel on this as well. So it's almost zero ground for this bevel. It kind of bends the rules of what it is, right? Normally you wouldn't call this zero ground. Zero ground would usually be referred to like if this didn't have this secondary bevel and this primary one went right to the edge and then it was stropped a little bit. That's usually what you'd call a zero grind, where it doesn't have zero grind. Gosh, now I'm getting all confused. But on this one, you've got essentially two primary bevels kind of, and then a little micro bevel, or I don't know what you want to call it, but it's kind of bending the rules of what you typically see in knives. Would make it a little difficult for sharpening. Obviously you would just strop it up as best you can, but when you needed to sharpen it, you'd be trying to match this big old bevel right here, I guess. Or you could put a true secondary bevel, I don't know, on there. But this is more of a showpiece, an art piece. Obviously, it's usable. It's heat-treated, high-quality steel, very thick behind the edge. You can see that stock right there. Kind of cool how this jimping kind of shrinks down. A lot of details. Oh, I wanted to talk about this as well. Right there, you can see the over travel. And Direware does a similar thing where it's a pin that's been inserted into the back of the lock bar there that prevents over travel. So that's what stops this from moving out. Now, the negatives to design like that is you can't adjust the lock bar. So if I wanted to reduce the tension on this lock bar, obviously I wouldn't, it's not my knife. I wouldn't be able to do that because that pin is permanent. I mean, essentially permanent. I guess you could try to crank it out there and press in a new one, but it's not like a over travel like a disc that you can just remove and then you can bend it out, or a lock bar insert that you could remove and then bend it out. It is in there. It's pressed in there, so it's kind of stuck there. Now, the weirdest thing about this knife, in my opinion, is this lock face right there. I have no idea why it's done this way. You can see it's got like a shelf to it. It's got like a mini lock face and then it hits a shelf. The lockup is pretty early. There's a good amount of room before it hits that shelf. But eventually, if it wore in enough, it would hit that shelf and then you might get some up and down. I don't know why Dwaine did it that way. I don't know if it's some reason, if he was concerned that the lock bar could eventually wear over too much and then that could cause problems. I don't know. I've never seen anybody else do anything even remotely similar to cutting a lock face in like that. I've seen some where it doesn't make it all the way across and it kind of has a pseudo version of this, but I've never seen one with a purposeful step cut into it just like that. Going back to like build quality, like despite the fact that this thing is kind of very industrial and huge and all of those kinds of things, there is like no detent lash. There is no play in that pivot. Everything is super tight. Lockup is all nice and early, which is pretty crazy. I think this was made, he signed the inside scale. I don't think we can see. I did take this apart to kind of check it out. And I think it was 2011. He has it dated in here. I'm trying to see if we can... I mean, you can see the writing, but we're not going to be able to make out the numbers. Pretty sure it said 2011 is when this was produced. He did a number of folders. The Cobra is a popular one. He also invented his U-bolt system, which is like a button lock, but it's different. I really want to check it out. At first, I thought it was a traditional button lock, but it's like a whole new mechanism where there's like a bar that comes through. I don't fully understand exactly what it is, but kind of want to check that out one of these days if I can find somebody that'll let me borrow it. He also did fixed blades, things like that. You don't see these come up too often, but they do sometimes pop up. You know, Arizona Custom Knives will get them in on occasion. You'll see him pop up on the forums and things like that. You know, obviously he's no longer with us, so he's not producing knives anymore. But I'm really, really bummed I didn't get a chance to meet him, and I didn't get a chance to order direct from him when that was a possibility. Really kind of, you know, I don't know. It's one of my regrets, right? I think he did run into some financial trouble at some point, and I want to say that I think he did make some poor decisions a little bit, which is very common for custom knife makers. It happens quite a bit where they run into trouble. I think his shop got hit with like a tornado or a fire or something. I don't know. I don't want to speak too much more about that because I don't have the details. I just kind of recall something like that happening. But definitely a really, from what I hear, really cool guy, really nice, and obviously knows how to make very innovative knives. And, you know, because the thing is, like, this may look, some of you may be thinking, this is the coolest thing ever. Thank you for showing me this. Some of you may be saying, this is the ultimate cheesy, bedazzled jeans mid-2000s knife. But nobody, like, despite this fitting into the category of like the crazy overbuilt knife, nobody was doing stuff like this at the time. Like now we're seeing this style coming out of a lot of Chinese makers like Knock Knives and things like that, where it's got this kind of futuristic kind of anime look to it with these overdone weird pieces and the milling and the writing and all these things. But at the time when these were being produced, there was absolutely nothing that looked like this, that was doing this. Nobody else was making knives really like this. Dwaine kind of had a very unique artistic flavor that nobody else matched. And so in my opinion, despite the fact that this is so big, I feel it still holds up today. Obviously more on the like spectacle art knife side, right? By no means am I saying this is some practical EDC knife, but just to me, this looks, other than the size and like the thickness, it looks fresh from a design standpoint. If this was scaled down, a little bit thicker stock, you know, this would fit right in with kind of a cool new maker, in my opinion. I don't know. Let me know. Comment down below. What do you think of this tunnel rat? But more importantly, I want to know, did you know who Dwaine Carrillo was before this video? Had you seen anything like this and maybe didn't know who made it or who designed it? I'd really like to hear from you guys on what you think of this knife. Do you agree with me in terms of this still kind of holding its weight with design and kind of freshness and that kind of thing? Or am I just talking crazy? All right, guys, talk to you later. I'm out.